Happy Super Bowl Sunday to everyone. And so that was about 5 years ago. We're going to have one more Super Bowl Sunday commercial at the end of the sermon, one that you will see tonight if you're watching. But does your life ever feel like that? Right? Does it ever feel like you're herding cats? You can't get them to do what you want. They're just going everywhere. There's just thousands of things, and they're all out of control. My life does. In fact, right now, it feels sort of like that. Yesterday, Chelsea and I put an offer in on a house. We're waiting to hear back, and so that's some nerves are associated with that. Chelsea starts a new job at Eastman Credit Union, a new position there. It starts tomorrow. I start my last semester of seminary next week, and we have church is always busy. And when you add all of that to all the everyday stuff, it feels sometimes like I'm just herding cats. And I find myself asking, how am I going to keep it all together? How am I going to get everything done? How am I going to get through today? How am I going to get through this week? How am I going to get through this month without things falling apart? How am I going to get through it and still have a good marriage? How am I going to get through it and still have fun and still be able to do what God's called me to do? And I don't know about you, but I find myself asking that question a lot. And I think the answer is that, and the only way I'm going to be able to do that, the only way I'm going to be able to keep a healthy marriage, the only way I'm going to be able to live into what God has for me is if I live a balanced life. And that becomes really, really important, that I have a balanced life. And when we don't have a balanced life, when I don't have one and when you don't have one, a lot of bad things can happen. Barna Group, they're a research organization. They found that the great majority of adults do not have a balanced life. In fact, they found that only 42% of adults are satisfied with their work-life balance. Only 39% of adults are satisfied with their overall amount of rest that they get. Only 38% of adults are satisfied with relationship boundaries. And listen to this, only 28% of all adults are satisfied with their overall stress levels. That 72% of all adults, including Christians, feel like they have too much stress in their lives. Right? Americans don't live a balanced life at all. And whether you know it or not, when you don't live a balanced life, it affects every other relationship in your life. It affects every other area in your life. When you don't have a balanced life, your spouse feels it. When you don't have a balanced life, your children feel it. When you don't have a balanced life, your coworkers and your boss and everyone that you're around, they feel it, whether you realize it or not. And we here at First Broad Street, we're convinced that as Christians, we need to have a balanced life. And on top of that, our spiritual lives need to be balanced as well. And we talk about that using our strategy, that we feel like to have a balanced life, you need to be doing things that are loving God, that are growing together, and that are reaching out. And we feel like as Christians, we're called to do those three things because we know this. A balanced spiritual life leads to a satisfied life. A balanced spiritual life leads to a satisfied life. We're confident that if you are living a life that is loving God, if you're living a life that's growing together in community and with other people, if you're living a life that's reaching out, whether it be across the street or across the world, if you're doing those things in your life, we can't promise you that you'll have an easier life, but I can promise you this, you'll have a better life. Because a balanced spiritual life leads to a satisfied life. And one of the ways as a church that we can help you do this, one of the ways as a church we can help you have a balanced life is for us to live into church values. Because values are things that are going to hold us accountable. They are things that we're willing to go on a hill and die for. They're things that we're willing to do whatever it takes to make sure our congregation is able to do these things. They're able to live into these values. And so if you look on the back of your Connect card you got this morning, there are our 6 values. And we've been talking about them since the beginning of the year. Experiencing God, powerful worship, healthy marriages, strong families, sharing life, and faith and action. Today I want to talk to you about sharing life, the second one there from the last. And when we mention sharing life, this is what we're thinking. That we seek to be an inclusive and diverse, Christ-centered community that values intergenerational relationships. I think one of the best ways for us to understand what sharing life really looks like is to turn to the early church. Because the early church had it together. They did sharing life unlike anybody else, unlike any other time period throughout the church's history, and I think we have a lot to learn from them. Not only is how to live as Christians in this world, because our world today is closer to the world as it existed then than it's ever been in the history of the church. And so we can learn a lot from them to how to live as individuals, as Christians, but also how to live as a church community. And so Acts chapter 2 is where we're going to be at. And so if you have a Bible, I invite you to open up an app and turn to Acts chapter 2. We'll be in verses 42 through 47. Now, there's a really important word here that I want us to all understand. It's a word that you learn as a very young child. If you're a parent, hopefully you taught your child the concept of this word very early on, and it's the word share. Right? So we understand what sharing means, but it's really important that we understand what sharing means. And so this passage, in some translations, the word shared is used up to 4 times. And so every time we get to the word shared, I'm going to invite us to say that together. So let's practice. I want to say shared, and you all say shared. All right. So every time we get to that, I'll invite us to say that together. So Acts chapter 2, verses 42 through 47. The believers devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, to the community, to their shared meals, and to their prayers. A sense of awe came over everyone. God performed many wonders and signs through the apostles. All the believers were united and shared everything. They would sell pieces of property and possessions and shared the proceeds with everyone who needed them. Every day, they met together in the temple and ate in their homes. They shared food with gladness and simplicity. They praised God and demonstrated God's goodness to everyone. The Lord added daily to the community those who were being saved. So when we talk about what sharing life looks like, right there's the golden standard. Right there's the church at its very best. And a lot of us have a lot of different opinions of what church should look like, but this is what the Bible tells us church should look like. Ecclesia, the word for church, is first used right there in that passage in Acts chapter 2. Notice this. When they did the things that we just read through, when they did all of this sharing that we just talked about, 4 things happened. And so when they did the sharing, when they acted how the church was supposed to act, 4 things happened. The first thing was that a sense of awe came over them. They realized because of what they were doing, because of doing all the sharing, because of all the things that they were doing, that they realized that something had begun happening that was bigger than them. That things were happening that were around them that they didn't understand, that they couldn't get a full grasp on. And so what you do when you don't understand something, when something's so great and you can't grasp it, you just stand in awe. And so the first thing that happened, a sense of awe came over them. The second thing is that God performed many wonders and signs through them. That God showed up. Because they did these things, no one had any doubt that God was there. God wasn't just some distant deity. God wasn't an absent God. God was there with them. They felt God's presence, and God worked in mighty ways amongst them. The third thing is it led to gladness and simplicity. The things that they were doing helped them lead great lives. They didn't have easy lives. In fact, they had really hard lives. In fact, several of them were persecuted. Several of them were martyred for their beliefs. But they had great lives. They did great things for God's kingdom. The fourth thing that happened is that God added daily to their numbers those that were being saved. Because they were acting how the church should act, God blessed them over and over and over. And so the question is this: how does our church, how does First Broad Street United Methodist Church live like that church lived? Because we know that if we lived like that church lived, those blessings, those 4 things will happen to any church that lives like that church. And so how do we live like that church? Because if we could live like that church, if we were living in such a way that everyone had a sense of awe about the things that were happening, if God was working in miraculous ways over and over and over, if we were living in simplicity, that's a hard thing for us. If we were full of gladness, and God just kept blessing us abundantly, just imagine real quick what this would look like. Here's the good news, is that it's starting to happen. Right, a lot of the leaders here, a lot of you here realize that we're on the brink of something, that a lot of energy has been created, and that a lot of us believe, me including, that First Broad Street's best days are ahead of it and not behind it. But the thing about it, what the early church did so well and what so many churches, whether they be large or small, so many churches struggle with today, and it's something that if we can grasp it, if we can do this one thing well, everything else will take care of itself. If we can get this one thing right, it will fix a lot. And that's if we can get community right. If we can truly learn what it looks like to live into community. If we can truly live into what it means to be a community, then that's when God's going to start pouring out the blessings. That's when we're going to start stepping back and just looking at awe of what all is happening. But the thing about community is that it all starts with you. Right? I can be a pastor. I'm in charge of groups here, and small groups, Sunday schools, things like that. And I could force these things on you, that you would live in community, but that's not going to work. What has to happen is that you have to make a decision that you are going to live a balanced spiritual life, that you're going to live a life in which you're living it with other people. In that early church, it took every member doing their part. And if you want to live the life that God has for you, the life of abundance that God in Christ promises us, community is so central to that. Christianity is not meant to be lived alone. It's meant to be lived in community. If you want to have a balanced life, think circles, not rows. Do you hear me? Think circles, not rows. You know, it's very possible, and it happens a lot at 10:45. We have some of our more committed people here at this service, but at 10:45, it's really easy to come into church, to sit down in a row, and to leave church and to not form a relationship with anyone. It's really easy to even come here. It's really easy in this type of setting to just go completely unnoticed. But we want you to be in community. We want you to be part of a group because we think it makes a world of difference. Whether that be a Sunday school, whether that be an in-home small group, whether that be a men's breakfast group, or whether that be that you're part of the worship team. We all can be part of groups that help us live into community. And I think it's so important. Because whenever you're in a group, you have the opportunity to share life with people. And so when you're in the hospital, when you're going through the rough patches in your life, you have people that are there that care about you, that love you, and that are there to support you. And that makes all the difference in the world. I want to tell you real quickly why I think it's so important to be part of a community, because it will help you answer 4 questions in life. And if you can answer these 4 questions and act upon the answers to these 4 questions, you will, 1, you'll live a balanced life, and 2, you'll live a satisfied life. And community helps us do all 4 of these things. And so the first question is this: what do you enjoy doing? You see, because we don't hold each other accountable to what we enjoy doing, we end up doing a lot of things that we don't enjoy doing. We end up doing a lot of things that later in life we regret doing. But if we have a community around us that speaks into that and holds us accountable to that, we'll live a more satisfied life. If you're a younger person right now and you're contemplating what a career might look like for you, or if you're a parent or a grandparent and you're going to have children and teens and young adults contemplating careers, this is the one piece of advice that I would give you, that you would give them, that I would pray that you would give them, is that they would choose satisfaction over salary. That they would choose satisfaction over salary. Our world, our culture pushes that we have to live the American dream and that we have to become wealthy. But the thing is, that doesn't achieve satisfaction for us. I think that's something that our church sometimes has difficulty living into. God made you on purpose and for a purpose. And we have to be people that do what we've been called to do. The second question that community helps us answer is this: what do you do well? Everybody needs a circle of friends. Everybody needs a circle of people that are given complete freedom to tell us the truth. Right? How many of you remember, I don't watch it anymore at all, but like the first couple of seasons, I always watched American Idol. Right? In the first couple of episodes, they would go to cities and there would be all these auditions. Well, about half the auditions were people that were absolutely awful, right? And whenever they would tell them that they were absolutely awful, they would just break down crying because they had been told their whole life that they were really good at that. That you were such a great singer, that you were so great at this. But then when they got in front of actual judges, they were awful. And the thing is, they might not be singing, but it's a lot of us with a lot of different things. We've been told by a lot of people that we're good at it, but we're really not good at it. But people just don't want us to tell us the truth. But when you have friends, when you have a community that's given complete permission to tell you what you're good at and what you're not good at, you're going to be able to live into the things that you're good at. And when you live into the things that you're good at, you're going to have a more satisfied life. And so what do you do well? The third question that community helps you answer is this: what bothers you? What breaks your heart? Because when you find that out, when you find out what bothers you, chances are you have found your passion in life. A lot of people struggle with, what has God called me to do? I think the easiest way for you to find out what God has called you to do is for you to find out what breaks your heart in the world. I've heard it said this way: let someone's misery become your ministry. Let someone's misery become your ministry. For me, what really breaks my heart is that we have a lot of people that say they're Christians. We have a lot of people that go to church that don't act anything like Jesus. And because they don't act anything like Jesus, they hurt a lot of people. And that breaks my heart. And I feel like the best way for me to do something about that is to be a pastor. It might be that your heart breaks over how many people die of cancer every year, and that you see it and that it affects you and it just tears you up every time you hear a story, every time you experience it. And so what might be happening is that God's calling you to do something about that. What might break your heart is that there are over 10,000 children on average that die every day of malnutrition. And so what God might be telling you to do through that is God might be telling you to do something about it. And so what bothers you? Let someone's misery become your ministry. The fourth thing that community helps you answer is this: what opportunities are right in front of you right now? What opportunities are right in front of you right now? Because if you're not faithful with what God's put in front of you right now, then God won't continue to put things that you want in your path. We have to be faithful with the small stuff so God will bless us with the large stuff. That goes individuals, that goes as a church, that goes as everyone. Friends, we all need community, and someone in community needs you. I want to watch a commercial. One more commercial. This is the Super Bowl commercial you'll see tonight. So even though it's a Budweiser commercial, that will be the best. That will be the best commercial tonight. I can promise you. Because when life is hard, when you find yourself lost, when you found that life has dirtied you up, when you find that you're at the end of your rope, when you find that you have nowhere to turn, you need community. You need people who love you. You need people who are going to stand beside of you. You need people who are going to fight for you. You need people who are going to pray for you. And that doesn't happen by just showing up on Sunday mornings. I think corporate worship is one of the most important things we can do as humans. I think we are created to worship God. But if you only had time to do one thing, if you only had 1 hour a week to give to God, I hope you don't. I hope you give more than that. But if you only had 1 hour a week to give to God, don't come Sunday mornings. Show up to a community. Show up to people who are going to love you and get to know your name. Show up and let people learn about you and live life with you. That's the most important thing that you can do, because life's hard. Life throws you wrenches, and it is hard to navigate. But if you have people that are with you and that love you and that care about you, it makes all the difference in the world. And when the community that you're involved in, when the group that you're involved in loves Jesus and helps you follow Jesus, you're able to get through anything. That there's truly nothing that can stop you. Friends, don't let today end and realize that there's not other people in this world that help you love Jesus and help you love other people. When you come forward here in just a moment to partake of the banquet of heaven, it's not something that's between you and God. We here in America, we really individualize religion. We like to make it all about our personal relationship, and that's just one aspect. But God didn't really die just for you. He died for all of us. He died for this community. And when you come forward and you take communion, you're not just saying, I follow you, Christ. You're saying, I'm going to be part of your community. I'm going to be part of your kingdom. When you come up here and you take communion, it's more about you saying that I'm a Christian, and it's more about saying I'm in this life together with all of these other Christians. And so when ISIS is killing Christians by the truckload, they're killing your brothers and your sisters. When there are people that are starving in the streets of Kingsport and in the streets of America, they're your brothers and your sisters that are starving. It's more than just about you. Communion is always and always will be about us. And so when you come up and you take this little piece of bread, this meal, it doesn't fill you up physically, but it can fill you up spiritually, because it can help you realize that you're never alone. It can help you realize that there are people that love you and that care about you. But at the same time, it will help you realize that you've got to get up and you've got to do something about it. That it's not enough just to come sit in rows. God hasn't called us to sit in rows.